I wrote my conceptual paper on fad treatments for the treatment of autism spectrum disorder. Autism spectrum disorder has been called the epidemic of the 21st century because of the ever-increasing numbers of people being diagnosed as such. Along with the growth of this developmental disorder, there has been a noticed growth in treatment options. Although heartening in theory, many of these new treatment options are fad treatments, and when put to the test for actual clinical significance, they leave much to be desired. The use of fad treatments is not only causing some trouble for the science of behavior analysis, but also for the families desperately searching for treatment for their loved ones. Using fad treatments that cast aside the empirical validity of the science of behavior and its efficacy as treatment for autism. Fad treatments also damage the individual because while undergoing these useless treatments, they are wasting months or even years of their lives not receiving a treatment that could actually benefit them. Some fad treatments, as the research will demonstrate, are damaging to the bodies of children and young adults receiving them. The use of fad treatments is concerning not only regarding the advancement of science, but poses a threat to our ethical standards. According to the Bailey and Birch book, the use of fad treatments by a board-certified behavior analyst would break many ethical codes, starting with Code 1, Responsible Conduct of a Behavior Analyst. How could a BCBA claim to be emanating honesty and integrity if they are providing a treatment that has no empirical validity? If said BCBA is practicing in compliance with Code 1.3, they should be current with the research and know what treatments have been debunked. A BCBA practicing in line with Code 1 would also be following Code 1.01 and relying on scientific knowledge and not following the trend of non-science-based fads. Additionally, a BCBA needs to be an advocate for Code 2.1 and only recommend empirically validated procedures. Possibly the most important ethical codes pertaining to fad treatment for autism are 7.02 and 9.0, disseminating behavior analysis and the behavior analyst's ethical responsibility to society. If the BCBA is doing their part to disseminate behavior analysts when and where they can, hopefully we can begin to combat fad treatments altogether and promote improvement in our society. As I could find, there are 2 current court cases pertaining to fad treatments in recent years. In 2002, Dr. Stephen Edelson from the Edelson Center for Environmental and Preventative Medicine was taken to court for his use of biomedical treatment, his claim to be an autism expert, and the infliction of serious harm on his patient. This first case was SM and TM. Initials were used to protect the people individually as a friend of their son versus Dr. Stephen B. Edelson and the Edelson Center. Over the course of Dr. Edelson's recommended treatment, the patient received chelation therapy, ozone treatment, and liquid nutrition treatment. When initially meeting with the parents, Dr. Edelson urged treatment, claiming that the sooner they started, the sooner they could begin to reverse the process, and that his particular treatment was medically necessary. After signing a large amount of paperwork, the parents removed their child from school and moved to the nearest treatment center. After beginning the treatment, parents reported they were not allowed to speak with Dr. Edelson regarding their child's treatment without paying a hefty fee and making an appointment far in advance. Parents quickly noticed the maltreatment of their child, including multiple injection sites per day, frequent change in needle site, sauna sessions with intense exercise, and a noted weight loss. The child also was required to ingest many pills and supplements for a day and would often throw them up afterwards. Court documents report that both the child and the parent suffered emotional and physical distress due to this treatment regimen. After the child had completed the initial 2 months of treatment, Dr. Edelson recommended the child stay for additional treatment and continued to charge the family an astronomical amount of money. The court document concluded to state that not only did Dr. Edelson's treatment have no benefit to the child, but caused serious harm. Dr. Edelson failed to recommend evidence-based treatment and failed to conduct controlled scientific studies related to chelation therapy and as a result, he was charged with medical negligence, breach of fiduciary duty, negligent misrepresentation, constructive fraud, battery, actual fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, punitive damages, and attorney fees, and subsequently in 2005, Dr. Edelson was stripped of his medical license. Additionally, there was a court case in 2010 of James Komen representing his son against Dr. Usman and Dr. Rizignol and their affiliated medical centers being the True Health Medical Center, Creations Own Corp., and Doctors Data Incorporated. According to court documents, Dr. Usman was brought to trial for failure to make proper diagnosis of August Komen, the use of unsafe treatments without proper monitoring, exposure to chelation therapy after improper diagnosis, improper administration of medicine, provision of uninformed consent for dangerous procedures. Court documents indicate that August was subjected to chelation therapy when his test results indicated he was not in need of this treatment, and his medical records do not indicate his results showing heavy metal intoxication. August was administered medication without justification and continued to receive chelation therapy after his lab results indicated transition to post-treatment. August's parents did not receive proper consent forms for risky procedures or were explained the risks and benefits of the therapies provided to August. Additionally, use of medications was not overseen by the FDA, the Institutional Review Board for Protection of Human Subjects, and did not have an investigation of drug license. August was also subjected to hyperbaric oxygen treatments and saunas without justification or monitoring. August's parents were asked to pay out of pocket for many of these unnecessary treatments and procedures to keep hidden the nature of the procedures from their insurance company. Dr. Komen's lawsuit against Dr. Rizignol is very similar in that Dr. Rizignol diagnosed and treated August for autism, but he had never met the patient over the course of 2 years of treatment. After this diagnosis, he began to use unwarranted and unsafe treatments with no stated endpoint and did not monitor August during this treatment time. Dr. Rizignol defended Dr. Usman's use of chelation therapy and other medications as well as administering intravenous immune globulin. Both Dr. Rizignol and Dr. Usman failed to consult with other professionals in the field and possess inadequate and otherwise tampered with medical files, unable to explain treatment outcomes, treatment rationale, and expected treatment termination. The lawsuit ended with Dr. Usman and Dr. Rizignol, the True Health Medical Center, Creations Own Corp., and Doctors Data accruing many charges including medical negligence, lack of informed consent, intentional misrepresentation, negligent misrepresentation, battery, negligence, medical negligence, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and civil conspiracy. As noted earlier in the Bailey and Birch book, many of the BCBA ethical guidelines overlap with many of the charges Dr. Edelson, Dr. Usman, and Dr. Rizignol faced, such as reliance on scientific knowledge. If the aforementioned doctors had made scientific decisions, they would not have subjected their participants to the prolonged treatment when it was found that the treatment was not effective. Competence was also violated. In both court cases mentioned above, doctors were practicing outside of their expertise and should have consulted with someone who was actually an expert in the field of autism or the science of behavior. Doctors Edelson, Usman, and Rizignol also failed to comply with Ethical Code 1.03 professional development. The therapies they provided were not the first of their kind. There had been many published research studies before theirs that would have pointed them away from these therapies that they chose to use. Ethical Code 1.04 integrity was completely discounted for, as none of the doctors in the above court cases took the time to be completely honest with their clients and their guardians. Ethical Code 2.0 responsibility to the client was failed, as doctors failed to acknowledge the rights and prerogatives of the client. These doctors also failed to comply with Ethics Code 2.1 treatment efficacy. Effective treatment must have both long and short-term benefits to the client. It is noted in one of the cases above the medical records received from the hospital where the treatment was administered was missing information. This would be against Ethical Code 2.1, documenting of professional and scientific work, as well as Code 2.12, records and data. Additionally, according to the court records, the doctors involved in these cases also failed to follow Ethical Code 3.0, assessing behavior, specifically Code 3.03, explaining assessment results. Many assessments were run on the participants involved in the chelation therapy, and these assessments were not explained to the guardians properly, but were also reported in different effect in the patient's medical file. Unfortunately, no matter how strict and broad and extensive ethical codes of any science can be, there will always be scientists and practitioners who cross the line and violate ethics for their own personal gain. It is only in a perfect world that we can expect everyone to always follow the rules. So now I want to take some time to talk about the therapies and the fads that I evaluated in my paper. The first I would like to go over is chelation therapy. So chelation therapy is the administration of chelating materials that, when entering the body, bind to the heavy metals in the body like lead and mercury and then exit the body during urination. The only approved use of chelation therapy is for the treatment of lead poisoning. Chelation therapy is delivered via intravenous or intramuscular injection for a total of 4 hours with many injection sites. And currently 6 to 11% of families have tried chelation therapy and have complained positive improvement as a result of this therapy. There was an article review conducted by Farrugia in 2013 on chelation therapy, resulting in ineffective treatment, serious risk, and has possible mortality. The evidence to support chelation therapy claim that those with autism have higher levels of heavy metals. This claim has since been debunked, and chelation therapy is only recommended for those who have lead poisoning. Similarly, a study conducted by James in 2015, a systematic review of the therapeutic use of chelation therapy, found that it was not an effective treatment for autism. Researchers independently conducted a risk-benefit analysis and determined that the possible side effects and noted reactions of chelation therapy outweigh any possible benefit of the therapy. Researchers also noted that there was initial inclusion of 12 studies in their literature review, but 9 had to be thrown out because of their methodological flaws. In 2008, Clinical Toxicology published a case report outlining the death of a 5-year-old boy with autism being treated with chelation therapy. In the case report, a physician made the fatal mistake of administering the wrong chelation agent, resulting in the child going into cardiac arrest. The authors conclude the article noting the tragedy of the availability of this treatment despite the fact that its efficacy is not validated, as well as its equally tragic desperation of parents who remain to seek this sort of treatment. The next therapy I'd like to address is secretin therapy. Secretin is an amino acid polypeptide that is produced in our intestines, and its role in the human brain is mostly unknown. Secretin therapy came to light in 1998 when Horvath and colleagues noticed changes in their patients' behavior after the accidental administration of porcine secretin. Horvath and colleagues reported an increase in eye contact, alertness, and language, and since this discovery, the use of secretin therapy has become widespread. However, many practitioners and scientists have taken to conducting studies to debunk yet another ineffective treatment procedure. In 2000, Chase et al. Conducted a 2-part study to test the efficacy of secretin on behaviors from children with autism. They used many forms of parent assessment, as well as tracked GI function and eye contact, receptive and expressive language. Results show that there were no observed significant improvements regarding behavioral measures. The researchers then conducted a second part of this study. Those who consented from the first were allowed to enter phase 2. Phase 2 consisted of a randomized control trial with secretion injection versus placebo injection. Results from this second study indicate almost no variability from baseline to follow-up for both groups. There was no statistical significance between groups, and change in behavior reported in both parts of the study was done via parent report, which tends to be biased in nature and subject to the placebo effect. Chase and colleagues conclude their study by stating this research does not provide any data supporting the use of secretin to change behavior related to autism. Similarly, in 2002, Malloy and colleagues conducted a research with very similar results, that the use of secretin is not effective in changing behavior or producing change in autism symptoms. When subjected to randomized control trials, secretin fares just as well as placebo with no statistical significance within or between groups. This particular study concludes to say that the long-term effects of this treatment are unknown. The costs outweigh the benefits, and secretin cannot be advocated for the treatment of autism symptoms at this time. The next therapy I discuss in my paper is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy is the administration of an increased concentration of oxygen under pressurized conditions. It is typically used to treat decompression sickness after divers come up too fast, or carbon monoxide poisoning, and sometimes in compromised skin grafts. To study the effects of the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, Jepson et al. In 2011 conducted research using single-subject design across a very large sample population. They measured the effects of hyperbaric oxygen therapy on vocal initiations, physical initiations, vocal responses, physical responses, SIB, aggression, disruption, tantrums, vocal and physical stereotypy, toy contact, and physical activity. And the results of the study indicated no change in level, trend, or variability with the implementation of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. There is no effect reported for any of the behaviors measured across any of the multiple baselines or individually, and researchers discussed the implications of this study, reporting there is no evidence to support hyperbaric oxygen therapy in the treatment of autism. Additionally, in 2008, Lerman and colleagues tested the efficacy of hyperbaric oxygen therapy on autism symptoms. Response measures included similar things like task engagement, spontaneous communication, and problem behavior. Research used a concurrent multiple baseline across participants, so each participant was able to get an adequate exposure to hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Results indicated increasing trends during baseline for engagement for 2 participants, indicating that oxygen therapy did not result in any changes during the treatment phase. As for problem behavior, results indicate participants showed a decreasing trend already during baseline, and the trend continued through oxygen therapy but had no spontaneous or immediate effect on the onset of oxygen therapy. And the last therapy I discussed, and arguably the most popular fad therapy for the treatment of autism, is the gluten-free and casein-free diet. Gluten-free and casein-free diets were developed from the theory that those with autism have a hard time breaking down proteins found in wheat, barley, rye, milk, and dairy products. The lack of proper digestion is linked to a condition called leaky gut, and it's then believed that leaky gut allows gluten and casein-based peptides into the circulatory and nervous system. They then bind to opioid receptors in the brain, changing the brain chemistry that then results in neural delays in development, cognitive functioning, attention, and learning. Although this treatment is not typically harmful, studies have been conducted to prove that this kind of diet will not change behavior. Hyman et al. In 2016 conducted a study with children with Asperger's pervasive developmental disorder. And autism, it was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study resulting in no significant effect in social interactions, language. There is no statistical significance. Recent literature review by Harwaz in 2013 examined 5 studies that included methods of either a gluten-free, gluten and casein, or casein-free diet and measured behavioral and developmental outcomes. There's one article where results indicated a change in behavior in some standard behavior measures, and additionally an article that concluded after a year of a gluten-free diet there was enhancements in the symptoms of autism. However, 3 of the 5 studies prove that gluten and casein-free diets are ineffective for changing behavior, improving language, attention, activity, sleep, and bowel movements. So what can we do? As scientists and researchers, we have a duty to uphold our ethical code. We also have a duty to disseminate our research. As we continue to hold up our ethical code and disseminate our research, we are building a bigger and bigger wall for fad treatments to climb. Currently, there are tons and tons we could name off: weighted vest, hug machine, deep pressure, dolphin therapy, floor time, sensory integration, vitamin 2, lifestyle therapy, organ stem cell, hemoglobin, so many. You may call them harmless and a waste of time, but some of these therapies will gouge parents' pocketbooks and have potential to cause physical damage to those involved. As behavior analysts of the future, it's our duty to continue to disseminate research that will debunk these fads for good, for the good of our science, as well as the welfare of those who will fall victim to their false claims. Any time spent receiving hoax therapy is damaging to an individual and is a waste of precious time that could be spent receiving a beneficial therapy that could lead to a life of real improvement.